Welcome back, and perhaps I can just begin by letting you in on what has happened in Ruiru, Kiambu County, whereby the 5-story building to which residents had been asked to vacate yesterday has collapsed. Moreover, there are no casualties given the fact that these residents had been asked to evacuate yesterday, and this is because cracks had developed in that particular building, and this is why they had been asked to vacate. This is in Ruiru, Kiambu County. This becomes the fourth in both Nairobi and Kiambu where we have seen collapse of building, and also this just comes 2 days after a building collapsed in the same county in the area of Ruaka. So that is the latest coming from that area, that is Ruiru town in Kiambu County. Right now we want to train our focus to our second and last conversation of the day on matters family check, even as we look at empowering of families in needs, who my guest will be helping us just understand more about this, particularly what he is also doing in his organization. And muchly this targets mostly on matters of a feeding program, and that particular feature there by our very own Ruth Wambui clearly well highlights some of the challenges and problems that Kenyans, particularly in the marginalized places of this country, face when it comes to matters of food security. I'm talking about Dr. Maurice Odhiambo, who is the founding director, Ministries International. And Dr. I'll just pick your brains on that particular feature later on, because you'll also largely, feature on our conversation. But perhaps you can begin by understanding Ministries International, when it was formed, and the whole idea behind this particular organization.
Thank you so much. Founded in 2001, Mana Ministries International is a non-denominational charity organization working with children, the youth, the widows, and the pastors, while spreading the love across our country. We are committed to preaching, promoting and demonstrating the gospel through equipping and empowering the people that we serve, both for and for ministry. Yes. So
the idea is targetedly mostly around empowering and supporting.
Yes, the idea is around empowering and supporting the families. Yes.
Empowering and supporting families.
Yes.
And this is not just any kind of families, but also we're looking at these families that have really greatly been affected, perhaps talking about orphans, widows, and street children.
Yeah, that's right. You see, I believe that God created human beings to live and operate as family units, because he knew that we would have ups and downs in our relationships, and he provided guidance and solutions out of such situations. And families sometimes can be faced with tough situations, and one thing that I believe is no matter what each family is facing, God always wants to protect and bless every family. And I am glad that we can be a part of the solution that God has for families. Yes.
Over 2 decades, I mean, since 2001, that's really quite a long time to just, be having such kind of an organization that really supports, I should say, the less fortunate in our society in one way or the other. But what has been the progress therein over this long time in which it has been in existence?
We have seen a great progress from the time that we began. Yeah. We began as a response to the call of God upon my life to be able to be a part of what God was doing through families. We started by feeding just a bunch of children in the slums, and everything that I have been able to do through this organization since the time that it was birthed, it has been founded on the love of God, just like in 1 John 4:19, the scripture says that we love because he loved us first. So everything we do is based on giving back, pouring out the love that we already received, because a man cannot give unless they receive. And out of walking through that obedience, we have seen God increase our organization from feeding just a bunch of children in the slums, where I personally, God allowed me to stay in the slums for 7 years, and he allowed me to meet my wife there. He allowed me to have my first 2 children there in the slums. And out of that, when he birthed this call out of my life, then I already understood what the families, the challenges that the families living in pathetic situations in the slums. I was not going to support to feed them just because I had more money or I was feeling sympathy for them. I was going back there to give back to these families in the slums because I have been there and I understand exactly what they go through. I understand it because I've struggled to feed my children. So out of that, my staying there and understanding the situation and going back to give back to the community there, we have seen God grow our organization from feeding just a bunch of children to now we have a school-based feeding program scattered across the various slums in Nairobi, and we have about 41 schools where we are conducting the school-based feeding program and feeding about 5,000 children at school every single day, 2 meals a day. So we have seen tremendous progress in what we are doing, and we have also been able to see such growth in terms of the widows groups that we feed, that we support in various ways. So I would say that so far there is just a lot that we have seen God allow us to achieve, but I believe that, you know, credit and honor I give to God because of everything that every progress that we've been able to make.
Well said. So then for you, this is more of a personal story. I mean, you don't really rely on statistics and data to show the number of orphans or widows or street children. This is because you actually lived there. You have seen the kind of challenges that this sector group, you know, goes through.
Yeah, most of the things that I am involved with, actually, I would say that God allowed me to personally experience the kind of situations that I am now coming in and helping with. I was able to stay like in such situation in the slums. I was able to watch my children cry for food, and as a parent I could not provide for them. I was able to, you know, as a young boy, I was able to not go to school, even though I really wanted to because of poverty. My parents could not, you know, take me to school. I really wanted if somebody would understand me and hold my hands and help me go through the school system, but I couldn't find one. And that is why now being able to run Man Academy in the village of Kisumu, that is offering education to vulnerable children, over 400 of them. That is the village where I was born and raised, and a village where I could not continue with my education to the level that I wanted. And out of that, God birthed the vision to be able to begin Man Academy, to provide support and education to the children that are just like me then, who had no one. And now, because I understand exactly what they also wish to have, now I want to come in and be that solution that I wanted somebody to be for me, and I had none. So out of the slums, the feeding program, I am able to relate with the people that are there, and that is why every time there is a crisis, like in 2019, 2020, when there was COVID, and there was a lot of families that were starving because they had lost their jobs. Some had been, you know, laid out of their work. Some businesses had been closed. So one of the main issues was families were starving because they had no means to put a meal on the table. And that is something that I could understand because I relate with it, and I could go back, and we were able to feed, like, provide meals to 15,000 family across the slums of Nairobi.
That period. In
that period, we were able to do that. We worked with churches and organizations and under the well-wishers, and we were able to provide, as Man Ministry, food bags, packages to 15,000 families to be able to help them get out of that situation. And of course, that is something that relates to the name of our ministry, Manna, which is a name that is derived from the book of Exodus 16 verse 35, that says the children of Israel, they ate manna until they settled in the land. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. So it's like when there was crisis in the wilderness, and the children of Israel, after being delivered from the Egypt, they were thirsty, they were hungry, they needed food, they needed help. They cried to God, and God provided manna, and this was for them to feed. It was a temporary food that was going to keep sustaining them until they were able to get to the land that the Bible says, the promised land that was going to be full of milk and honey. They were not going to need this again. So manna was able to get them to the border, to the place where now they can be able to settle. And what we are doing is almost going to that direction. We help children who cannot help themselves. We believe we want to be able to give them education, to feed them until they are able to take care of themselves. We want to empower the widow. We want to give them food. We want to teach them on how they can do their farms, how they can do their businesses. We mobilize them and put them into groups or self-help groups and help them to start table banking and stuff like that, and until they are able to take care of themselves.
Okay.
So just that it relates to that. It's kind of a personal story that inspires me to do what I'm doing. I
can feel it. You have the passion in even how you are describing, basically what you're doing. So then this is not just about a feeding program. It actually spans. You've talked about training of the widows. I mean, you've also talked about education.
Yes.
So this is just more than feeding program. It's actually holistically empowering.
Yes, it is holistic empowering. We began just like a discipleship ministry that was to focus on helping people be strong in their faith and be disciples. But God has expanded this, and because we are so much passionate about family, because I love family, we have seen God lead us to different areas of needs, and we have always been obedient. Like we do feeding programs in the slums, feeding the children, school-based. God lead us to care for the widows. We have built homes for widows who might have been homeless right now. We have been able to build about 600 homes for widows who would have been homeless now. We have been able to, we are currently feeding about 300 widows every month. We give them food to take home. We train them. We have a tailoring school, vocational school for disadvantaged girls. Girls that have some really pathetic past. They are victims of perhaps rapes and rejection and early motherhood, and we bring them to our vocational school, and we train them to master sewing skills for a year. And after they do that, they graduate after 1 year, and we empower each one of them with a sewing machine and garments to be able to start their own sewing machine, so that they don't continue to depend on hands to mouth or mercy of people who some have taken advantage of them and made the situation to be worse. So we do that. We have the computer lab, we have the Manna Academy where we offer that. We also have I would say scholarship program. It's called Light of Kenya, that after feeding these children in the slum and they get to let's say grade 8, and we realized that we started to follow, where do they go? We found out that some would even go back to the streets because they cannot afford to go to high school. So I began the scholarship program called Light of Kenya, that is identifying most needy students who cannot proceed to high school and be able to give them an opportunity to go to high school. So we have a lot of children also being sponsored into high school across the country, and also some are in colleges and universities. So it's a holistic thing, areas that we are touching.
I hear you. So then these slum areas that you've constantly talked about, are they in the urban centers? Have you cut across beyond? Where exactly are they that you deal with these individuals?
Mostly, I would say that or the school-based feeding program in the slums, we do them in the urban because we do them mostly here in Nairobi.
Okay.
All the 41 schools are scattered across the slums within Nairobi. I stayed in Kibera slums, but then I understand that the challenges I experienced in Kibera that inspired me to begin this kind of organization, they are also the same that is being experienced in other slums across Nairobi. So we do this program, the feeding program within Nairobi, the slums across Nairobi. I understand there are other slums in Kisumu and other parts, but like I always believe there is always much that we can do, especially with the grace and help of God. And I believe that whenever and wherever that God allows me to reach, I am so thankful that I can't do everything. I can't go to every city, but the one that God allows me to do, I am able to do here in Nairobi. Apart from the school that I began in the village where I was born and raised in Kisumu, Man Academy, I also started as a result of answering to the needs of the children that I know in my community are like me then when I was growing up, and I wanted to be the solution. I wanted to be the answer that I really needed to have at the time I was growing up, and nobody wanted to answer that call. And I said, God said to me that, you know what, I allowed you to go through that. I allowed you to go through the without education to the level that you wanted to go, actually to primary is where I got to. And he said, I allowed you to do that so that when you begin a school to assist the children that are like you, then you will not just do it because you're somebody who went to the city, got lucky and had a lot of money, you want to go back and give. I wanted you to do something that you relate to, something that you understand. So if anybody need comes to you, you won't see them as a bother. You would see yourself through them. You will see your situation through them. You will see your children in those same children. So apart from that, I do a few feeding program in Kisumu. Of course, we do some in other countries like in Arusha, Tanzania. I just came from Arusha a couple of days ago. We have like the same program happening there in the remote villages. We have some programs in Uganda, but in Kenya we do that in Nairobi and partly in Kisumu.
So clearly you've expounded your bounds. You've just talked about Uganda, Arusha, but then in Kenya you do it in Nairobi. So then are there plans to even move to other counties? Because then one would think, we haven't even exhausted.
In Kenya.
Yeah, so then, and we equally have the same challenges beyond Nairobi as a county. Yeah. So then are there plans to do that in different other counties as much as you've expanded in different countries?
Yeah, there are plans to be able to move to other counties. And in fact, we have been able to, besides having an ongoing feeding program in the slums of Nairobi, and doing something in Kisumu, which is permanent, we have been able to reach out to so many counties. We've been able to go to Central Province. We fed widows there. It is not an ongoing thing, but once in a while we have gone there, meet with the widows and handed over food to them. We have been able to go to Homa Bay County. We have been able to go to Kitui County. We have been able to go to Mombasa. And besides that, I work with the World Fund Funds. I'm in charge for them here in Africa, and so through that we have a lot of orphanage homes scattered across Kenya that we feed, and we began that feeding program. It's a orphanage home feeding, emergency feeding program that we began during that COVID time, because we realized that most orphanage homes, they depended on well-wishers going, visiting the orphanage home with a shopping and giving it to them. But during COVID, people were not allowed to visit the orphanage home. So these guys, there were people who could not send their money unless they go. So a lot of orphanage homes were suffering for lack of food. So we started a kitty that was going to respond to their cry. So through that, we established that kitty that is ongoing right now. So we identify orphanage homes with light need for food, and we go out there and we provide their food. We provide basic things like mosquito nets, beddings, and maybe renovation of their facilities. And that has enabled us as Ministries to also be our presence to be felt not only in Nairobi and Kisumu. That has enabled us our presence to be felt like in so many other counties, including Mombasa, Central, Kitui, and other places.
Well said. I mean, you just talked about orphanages and funding, and so that creates a segue for my next question, which oftentimes you know that when you talk about organization, much as they are doing quite a lot to assist and help the less fortunate in the, in one way or the other, there's always an issue and challenge when it comes to funding. So then how do you even sustain it? It's one way to even get funding from a donor, but sustainability, how have you navigated this with the numbers that you've talked about that you assist?
It's been a challenge, because once you are into something like this, when you're helping the needy, for example here in Kenya, when a situation like you just talked of a collapsed building, Kenyans would become emotional and they would want to come right now and be involved, but they are not going to be there tomorrow. So if you are moved by that and you start doing something expecting Kenyans to continue doing that, you'd be left hanging. So that is the same case even with the donors, whether locally or internationally. You don't want to rely on the donor funding to be able to do what you are doing on a long term. So we thank God that we have a number of individual friends and partners that have been part of what we are doing through their prayers, encouraging, and also even financial support, both here and internationally. But because of the sustainability, we have been able to think of how we can be able to invest in a few things that would help us to continue offering our services to our people. So we have a couple of things that we have invested in to be able to also help generate local income to be able to support what we're doing. So I have a few things that I'm doing to be able to also help generate some help to be able to do what we are doing apart from the donor fund. The other thing is, for example, feeding the widows. For many years, because we began that in 2001, for many years I thought that what I wanted to do was to just provide meals or food bags every month to the widows, and they can feed on that food and then come back to me, and then feed what I've given, then come back to me. And I just realized, because we started with a small number, now the number continues increasing. Like now we have 300 widows, and this month when we were feeding our widows, we had 180 widows not in the program who attended that distribution event, and they were pleading to be added into the monthly feeding program. And that made me to realize that there is more to helping the widow besides giving them handouts and just food. So that led us to start mobilizing these same widows into self-help groups and help them register their self-help group. And we started empowering them, like giving them some money for each of the group and helping them understand table banking. They can borrow money, begin their own businesses and stuff like that, to be able to sustain themselves instead of depending on the food that we give to them. Some of them we have had plans on sourcing for other people that have experience in like soap making, weaving and stuff like that. We want to bring them to be able to train our widows on doing things like that. Some widows just have land, some are not even that old, they just let the land lay bare. We want to help them to be able to till their land and help them with seedlings and be able to work, so that during harvesting season the widows can also be able to have something they can harvest, instead of believing the lie that widowhood is the end of life, because that is a lie. Widowhood is not the end of life. We look in the scripture and we see that God used widows to support even the work of God, support children, support even pastors.
Yes.
So widowhood is not the end of life.
Okay.
But when you just want to give to them, then you make them to believe that I am nothing, I can never amount to anything. All I need is to just wait to be given until I die. So we are trying to also break that as a way of sustainability.
I hear you. Yeah, exactly. So then does this mean also just for the sustainability of a good number of these organizations? Because also, as you mentioned, you know, they will start, some will drop midway, some won't become sustainable midway because a donor maybe at some point either they've refused or money has clearly run out.
Yes.
But also what I'm getting from you is that aside from just dishing out or in one way or the other assisting, a key area is also empowering them. Look for ways in which you can train them to be self-reliant as well.
Yes.
Is that one of the things that always misses when it comes to organization assisting less fortunate?
I think that is one thing that misses when it comes to organization, and I also think that it misses even in the government.
Okay.
Whereby, you know, organization, they miss this point where they expect, like, they think that the more people that comes to them to assist, that is kind of that determines the success of the organization, when so many people come for you to be able to help. And that,
so like for instance, the way you said 2001, one was expecting that you have like 10,000 people you're assisting, like 10,000 widows.
10,000 widows,
and
yes.
you're talking about 300.
300, yes. So talking about 300 because I can only be able to go once in a while when there is a crisis in Central and say, okay, let me meet with the widows because I have resources one time and do it. And then encourage them that if there is anything they can do, if it's weaving, it's what that they can be able to do by themselves to put a meal on the table. If I'm able to support that one time, I would be able to do that. There are girls, disadvantaged girls, that have approached me. You know, they are not able to feed their children, they're not able to take care, and people have taken advantage of them and made their situation worse. And I'm thinking through this. Yes, I can be able to help them once in a while, give them food. But then there is this thing that I realized. I realized that these girls don't need a handout. They need to be trained to master a sewing skill, to be able to learn computer and stuff like that, so that they, at the end, when we empower them with the right tools, then they can be able to make life. And I've seen a lot of them after the end of the course and after empowering them with the tailoring machine. I always feel so satisfied going around the community and coming across their shop where they are now, you know, running their sewing businesses, and they have people that they are actually training. And that is what I think is going to be the solution for us as an organization, creating lasting solutions for the people that we support, and not mobilizing and recruiting people that keep looking at us forever to feel big, that, you know, I have 1,000 people that come for food every day. I would rather have 5 that would look for food for a month, and then after a month, during that time, I train them to be able to make their own
by
food
themselves.
Yes,
exactly. And I think I like what I was saying, that it's not really in the numbers, but it's in the impact that you make at the end of the day.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then how do you cut out? Because, well, even this 300, like you said, there were 180 who are not even in this, and they were begging to be there, you know. So then how do you cut out? So then you say that this one looks more needier than this one, so I'll pick on this one and leave this one, because this is a wide demographic, from widows to orphans to street children.
We work with the local authority, like the chief, who understand the situation in the community where they are working. We also work with pastors, local pastors in the community, and other organizations who understand the people in each community, and they are able to identify, like, widows who need a house, nobody can build a home for them, widows who are going without food. They bring those widows to our attention, or even the girls, and then once we get that, we have our team that would go out there and do an evaluation. Imagine some situation that have been brought to us, like a widow who is homeless. We have sent our team to go down there and evaluate the situation, and guess what they found? They found that yes, the widow is needy, but they did not need our help. All that we needed was to find out if they have a son who has forgotten them, and we needed to just talk to somebody who is responsible about helping their own. and we have talked to them to go back and consider, and we have seen that work. So there is a lot that is involved in terms of identifying those with plight need that needs to be included in the feeding program, because they are old, they are disabled, they cannot work with their own hands. There is also the evaluation also help us to identify, like somebody who say, I want food, and we say, you don't need food, you just need to be empowered to get food by yourself. Yeah.
So you actually do due diligence before you even incorporate?
Yeah, we have to find, because everybody would need food, everybody would need something more.
Yes.
And corruption is everywhere. Somebody would want to bring somebody who is their mother or their grandmother to the feeding program when they are capable of feeding their grandmother. So we want to do, besides what we receive, we want to do some background check to see if indeed this particular person is indeed qualifies to get the kind of support or training or whatever that we have versus the other one. That way we are sure that the ones that we have should be there ahead of the rest.
I hear you.
Yes.
So then now, since you're talking about feeding and feeding programs, so then it's a good point for me to also pick your brains on the GMO debate that has again come up. Should I say like GMO debate 2? Something of the sort, following that statement that was made by the CS Trade over the weekend. I mean, it's really quite a lot to talk about matters of food security, and just going by what you're doing in your organization clearly shows that matters of food security is really quite a pertinent issue amongst a good number of Kenyans. What would you say in respect to this? What do you think about the ongoing debate?
My comment on the ongoing debate is I think maybe the CS was, he never meant, it wrong, but when I saw the comment like, Kenya is a country that is, we are candidates of death, which is not, of course everybody will die, but then we don't want to die for food. We don't want to eat poison to die. So I would say that there are experts who would want to see if that the GMO, products, they are audible, they are good for the family, but anything that would poison the family, that would not be good. But then as for us as an organization, in relations to what is going on, what is the solution for food security, I believe again that it is just an empowering our people. For example, I just came from Arusha, and on my way through Kajiado, I was able to witness livestock that are dead by the roadside because of ongoing drought. I was able to see people that need to be attended to. And one of the things that we are doing that as an organization, we believe that there is a challenge with the rainy season. So people are not able to harvest enough from what they do. So we are drilling wells. And just November, we were able to launch 2 wells. One we drilled in
as a ministry.
Yes. We were able to to launch one well that we drilled in Oma Bay, Ugis. We installed solar panels so that the water can be pushed further. We were able to drill another one in Bungoma. We have another one in Kisumu. And in Arusha, we just launched a well that we had drilled there in a very place that is there is a lot of drought. And one of the things we are doing is we want to, like in Arusha, we want to install the solar panel so that the water can be piped into marginalized community where there is drought, and we are encouraging the community to take advantage of that free clean water to not only drink but also to start some small scale farm that they are able to get some food that they want to eat. And I believe that is just a small part of our contribution into finding a solution for the ongoing drought and starvation in the country. Yes.
Wow, you're really quite doing a lot in the organization. So then you talked about it just being a small solution, but also it is a matter that the president spoke into. I mean, just is it weeks after he took oath of office, there was the launching of the Thiba Dam in Kirinyaga, and I start also Thwake Dam in Makueni is about 80%, in terms of completion, which is also what I'm seeing you doing in terms of wells and as the dams they are in. So then one would ask, is this one of those things that we should be thinking moving forward? Much as you want to say it's it's a small, but it really does go a long way. So then should we be thinking of this to at least deal with this issue of food security in the country?
Yeah, I think that is going to be the long-term solution when we start to think ahead of time, because there is a challenge. People no longer understand how the climate is going to be like. So I think it's going to be the long-term solution where we need to go into this area that are affected with the drought, and if we can drill wells and install solar and be able to pump this water into the community, help them with irrigation. If we go to places like Kisumu where they are close to the lake, I think the county government need to think about how they can make use of that water. The people around Kisumu and the people that are alongside the lake, they are not even supposed to be depending on the rainwater because they have already enough. They should be able to want to invest into the irrigation system and pump that water out, and then help the community to have a way of growing their crops, and they will be having a lot of food. They can be able to feed even their neighboring counties. So this is the long-term solution, investing in the dams, investing in the irrigation system. And I thank God because when our president took over, one of the things that they started to give an upper hand was fertilizers. Those are some of the things that are going to empower our farmers, encourage people to be able to harvest more than what they have been able to get. And in the long run, maybe Kenya will have sufficient food that can be able to help our country, even with the reduction of the cost of basic commodities. Maybe when we invest in this, in the long run, that is what is going to be able to help us.
Well said. And I mean, and he even talked about construction of 100 more dams. So clearly, these are some of those projects that really Kenya is just waiting to see how they unfold in the long run. But also, as we begin to wind down, Dr. Maurice, you talked about the widows, largely, the orphans. But I also want to understand just about the street children and also how you do follow up on them when it comes to some of those areas in which you assist them.
The street children program that we've been able to have is, I would say, we don't have an orphanage home that is of our own to bring them in. We partner with orphanage homes. Like that would be like directly what we do. Like we just built an orphanage home through our partner for some ministry in Kayole. So what we do with our street children, we identify those who are still willing to learn. For example, we have one in our program that we actually picked from, it's called John Moniki. We picked from the dump site. He was living there. We brought him to school, primary school, secondary school, and now he's in the university at Rongo University. And that is a pure street boy that he doesn't even know who their parents are. He doesn't even know if he's really what tribe, but it is an indication that there can be transformation even with the street children if somebody is really willing to listen to them and think beyond dropping and giving them handout on the street to feed on, or or money. There are people, there is things we can do to just transform life of the street children. So that is a part of what we have been able to do with some of the street kids.
Well said. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Maurice, we really appreciate what you're doing in terms of just assisting the less fortunate in the country, and I'm liking also how you really you've expand your bounds, and also not just dealing with one specific set, but you've cut across from widows to orphans to street children, and again also just coming up with follow-up programs for these persons in the community. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and again, this is just also to remind our viewers of this particular building that collapsed in Ruiru town, that is in Kiambu County. This is the same building to which these residents had been asked to vacate yesterday. It's the 5-story building, and again also this becomes the 4th building in both Nairobi and Kiambu to collapse in just within a span of 1 month, again coming 2 days after a building collapsed in the same county in Ruaka. But still the good news is that there has been no reports of any deaths, given the fact that these tenants had been asked to vacate yesterday. Also in studio, we have been having this conversation with Dr. Maurice Odhiambo, who has been talking to us basically about what he is doing in his foundation or organization. He's the founding director, Ministries International, just talking about what he's doing to at least assist the widows, orphans, street children in, of course, Nairobi and beyond. Good place to end this conversation, and ultimately, good morning, Kenya. I'm Doreen Arange Okelo on behalf of the entire team. Asante sana. Till tomorrow, good morning.